Salary issue in MLB league.
Money just doesn't come. If they didn't give it to the players, the owners would just keep it. So it's not like this. People are like, oh, teachers only get paid $40,000 a year, but Ohtani gets $100 million a year. That's not fair. It's like, but Ohtani, the MLB, brings in that much money. So if they didn't pay the players from the advertising revenue, the money has to go somewhere. It's bringing in that much money. So that's why the players split it. But it's all greed, because like the owners are charging so much money to go to the game and to watch it, to advertise it. People like pay, but people would rather watch sports, obviously, than watch doctors.
The debate over whether to tie players' salaries to a fixed percentage of league revenues has become the defining issue in baseball's labor landscape. The league's chief executive began publicly championing a payroll ceiling months ago, asserting that limiting team spending would foster long-term stability. Yet this call for restraint did not originate in his own imagination. It reflects the consensus among a critical mass of team owners. In a sports governance structure, any significant labor change demands approval from 23 of the 30 club executives. If just 8 owners disagree, progress stalls. Thus, every word from the commissioner carries the weight of behind-the-scenes owner strategy, rather than a purely individual belief. From a union's perspective, this narrative poses a direct challenge to its membership. Players have watched rival leagues impose strict spending limits and heard promises that similar measures here would guarantee more predictable growth in salaries over time. The commissioner has pointed out that other top U.S. sports routinely cap team payrolls at roughly half their total revenues, and that, if baseball clubs had done the same, the players might have collectively earned billions more in past decades. He frames his proposal as a corrective measure, meant to align baseball's economics with broader professional sports norms and to ensure that both players and owners reap sustainable rewards.
I hope they don't push for it, because if they do push for it, we're not going to see baseball. That's what this comes down to. And it's going to be a real window, I think, into Major League Baseball and into its owners and into the league's priorities and visions for the future, just how hard they lean into the idea that a salary cap is a must-have this time around.
Union leaders, however, see a trap in this argument. They argue that a hard salary cap would stifle players' earning potential and weaken their leverage in contract talks. Many players, especially those who reach free agency, thrive in an open market where teams compete by offering ever larger deals. By contrast, a cap tied to revenues could constrain bidding wars and effectively freeze salaries at artificially low levels during revenue slumps. To make their case, the union has highlighted the last collective bargaining vote, when its executive council voted against the agreement, but the rank-and-file player representatives overruled them. That result underscored a simple truth. The players ultimately hold the power, regardless of leadership endorsements. Both sides recognize that formal negotiations have not officially started. Until the first bargaining session convenes, all public statements serve as positioning exercises. The league chief has taken every public platform, from investor conferences to media interviews, to make his case. Behind closed doors, he presents detailed revenue forecasts and comparative analyses of other sports. He urges club owners to stay the course, arguing that a predictable spending framework will attract new investors and justify expansion in key markets. Publicly, he speaks directly to players as well, hoping to cast doubt on the union's approach and to appeal to their desire for long-term security.
It's no secret that Rob Manfred wants a salary cap. I think that that's clear. And it's not Rob Manfred talking on behalf of Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball. It's Rob Manfred talking on behalf of owners with whom he reports, to whom he reports.
The union, in turn, has ramped up its own media outreach. One of its top representatives chose to appear on a player-focused podcast funded by the union itself. In contrast to mainstream sports talk shows, this program offers a comfortable space where union officials can speak freely to players without hostile questioning. During that episode, the representative softened his tone for the audience, fielding easy queries and framing the union's strategy in relatable terms. He emphasized that the union had negotiated the last deal with the players' best interests at heart and cautioned against any attempt to drive a wedge between players and their elected leaders. Yet the representative's comments were much more than words meant solely for the podcast's regular listeners. He was aware that owners and the league bargaining team would dissect every phrase. By attacking the commissioner's motives and reminding players of the union's past achievements, he aimed to strengthen solidarity and to signal to the owners that the union would not yield easily. This pre-bargaining skirmish highlighted a crucial dynamic. Both sides see value in speaking directly to the players to influence the upcoming vote on any new agreement. When the parties finally sit down at the negotiating table, they will not only discuss salary limits. They will also tackle related topics that could shift the balance of power. Arbitration rules, which determine when a player becomes eligible for salary arbitration, could be adjusted to delay free agency rights, potentially costing the union millions. Revenue-sharing formulas, which transfer funds from large market clubs to smaller franchises, may be overhauled. Service time rules, which dictate how minor league time counts toward free agency, could be recalibrated. Even minor league wages are on the agenda, as the union argues that better pay for prospects would strengthen player pipelines and demonstrate commitment to the sport's future.
So what you're seeing is a major PR strategy that is being used by both the commissioner and the union to start positioning themselves for when CBA negotiations start in earnest. They've already started between the union and the league publicly.
Owners insist that revisiting these ancillary rules is essential if they are to agree to any salary cap. They argue that teams should be rewarded for developing homegrown talent and penalized if they hoard top players under the existing system. By tweaking arbitration and service time thresholds, the league believes it can incentivize franchises to invest in scouting and player development rather than bidding wars. Union leaders counter that such changes would unfairly disadvantage young players and reduce their lifetime earnings. They claim that any delay in arbitration or free agency equates to taking money out of players' pockets under the guise of club incentives. One of the most contentious issues is minor league compensation. While major league clubs generate billions in ticket sales, media rights, and sponsorships, many minor league players earn wages barely above minimum wage. The union has made public appeals for modest raises, arguing that improved pay would help prospects focus on development and would show that the entire baseball ecosystem values its workforce. Owners have expressed sympathy, but worry about the financial burden of raising pay across multiple affiliate teams. They propose funding any increases through refined revenue-sharing arrangements or linking minor league raises to projected revenue under a cap-and-floor system. This cap-and-floor concept merits closer examination. A salary floor would guarantee that each club spends at least a minimum amount on player payroll, ensuring that small market teams do not slash costs to the detriment of competitive balance. A cap would prevent big market franchises from outspending rivals by too wide a margin. Both players and owners acknowledge that one without the other is impractical. A floor without a cap could impose excessive costs on losing teams, while a cap without a floor could suppress overall player compensation. Finding a joint solution requires honesty about financial realities and precise forecasting of future revenues.
To 1970, the average family income was just under $10,000, and the best paid MLB players were making about 16 times that amount. It's trending upward, and this is around the time that Curt Flood, star player of the St. Louis Cardinals, got traded to the Philadelphia Phillies and decided he didn't want to move to Philadelphia. He wanted to stay in St. Louis, and this helped pave the way for MLB free agency. And this is really when contracts start to go crazy.
Historically, baseball's labor agreements have relied on less rigid mechanisms. In past decades, the sport employed luxury tax systems, penalties for teams whose payrolls exceeded a certain threshold, rather than outright caps. Those systems encouraged revenue sharing and discouraged runaway spending, but stopped short of hard limits. Luxury taxes generated redistribution funds for small market clubs, yet teams often paid the penalty for the prestige or competitive advantage of signing elite talent. The current debate raises the question, is it time to move from a soft tax model to a fully enforced cap, or would such a shift undermine baseball's distinctive labor framework? Beyond the numbers, trust, or the lack of it, looms over the negotiations. In previous rounds, accusations flew about hidden escrow funds, disputed revenue definitions, and delayed financial reports. Some players still recall heated disputes over deferred bonuses and how the union handled those discussions. Club owners, on the other hand, remember instances when union negotiators walked away from talks at critical junctures. To build the trust needed for a durable agreement, both sides will have to commit to transparent data sharing, perhaps by agreeing to jointly overseen audits or involving neutral third-party observers. Another factor that colors the bargaining atmosphere is comparison to other major sports. Football players remain disenchanted with their union, citing lax communication and decisions they felt did not reflect their interests. Basketball experiences periodic salary cap crunches that lead to high-profile contract restructures and contentious mid-season trades. Baseball's union leaders are keenly aware of these examples. They emphasize that, unlike in the NFL, baseball's players have a history of unity and a share in postseason profits. They warn that a misguided move toward a hard cap could jeopardize this solidarity and damage player morale. Owners, conversely, point to leagues overseas, particularly in soccer, where stringent salary caps and profit sharing help smaller clubs stay afloat despite lavish spending by a few giants. They argue that if baseball does not adopt similar discipline, it risks creating an even wider gulf between large and small markets, undermining the concept of competitive balance that fans cherish. Yet baseball's revenue model, rooted in regional broadcast deals, minor league systems, and an expansive schedule, differs markedly from soccer. Translating those experiences into workable baseball policies poses significant challenges. Media coverage and public sentiment also influence both sides. Fans tend to side with players on issues of fairness, but grow frustrated when lockouts threaten the start of the season. Sponsors and broadcasters demand certainty, preferring long-term agreements rather than last-minute deals. The league has warned that an impasse could delay games, disrupt marketing plans, and erode fan goodwill. The union counters that any concession made under the threat of a lockout would be coerced and unsustainable. Both sides must balance short-term pressure with long-term strategy, recognizing that alienating the fan base could hurt revenue more than a raised salary floor or lowered cap. As the calendar approaches the first official bargaining session, tension mounts. The league's chief has already run through multiple scenarios with analysts, modeling the financial impact of various cap levels and revenue splits. He insists that a cap around 50% of revenues, mirroring other leagues, could allow players to earn between $4 and $6 billion collectively each season, depending on growth. The union's actuaries dispute those figures, arguing that such a cap could cap collective earnings far below current projections, especially in years of declining attendance or broadcast rights renegotiations. At the same time, union leaders have prepared detailed counterproposals. These include adjusted arbitration timelines, incremental salary floor increases, and enhanced minor league pay scales tied to team revenues. They also propose a graduated luxury tax system with steeper penalties rather than a full cap, aiming to maintain flexibility while discouraging punitive spending disparities. In public remarks, they emphasize that their plan would preserve players' ability to negotiate freely while still protecting smaller clubs from financial overextension.
Rob Manfred, and we covered this when he talked, remember when Liberty had their investor conference, because they're a public company, and Rob Manfred talked about a few things, and we went through it here on a recent Nothing Personal. I figured the union had to strategize how they'd respond, and I must tell you, I did not think that their response would be Bruce Mayer going on foul territory.
The official negotiations will not take place in a vacuum. Behind the scenes, individual players will pressure their representatives, while club owners confer among themselves to find common ground. Media commentators will scrutinize every concession, framing each as either a victory or a setback for labor or management. The union will hold player town halls, using video conferences and team visits to reinforce the message of unity. The league will brief analysts and investors, highlighting potential efficiencies and growth strategies enabled by pay controls. What transpires in those closed-door sessions will shape baseball's economic future. A deal that finds a workable balance between a cap and a floor could stabilize payrolls, protect players' incomes, and maintain competitive fairness across all markets. It could serve as a model for other sports, demonstrating how to combine spending discipline with player empowerment. Conversely, failure to reach an accord could result in a lockout, lost games, and long-term damage to the sports brand. Both sides know that a bitter standoff would undermine the very economic health they profess to defend. In the end, the question returns to relationships. The commissioner must convince club owners that a unified approach will attract new fans and investors. Union leaders must assure players that they will not relinquish bargaining power or free agency opportunities. Both sides must recognize that striking a just deal requires listening as much as talking, sharing information as well as making demands. Negotiations will be arduous, with each paragraph of the final agreement scrutinized and debated. Yet if both parties enter the process with respect and a shared commitment to baseball's future, they may transcend past grievances and craft a stable, fair economic framework. As the first session looms, uncertainty persists. Will the league and the union overcome their mutual suspicions? Can they forge an agreement that combines a reasonable salary ceiling with a strong payroll floor? Will players continue to trust their leadership to protect their rights? Will owners agree to revenue-sharing tweaks that mollify player concerns? The outcome remains anyone's guess. What is certain is that these negotiations will test the sport's capacity for collaboration and will determine how baseball rewards its labor for years to come. If all parties keep their eyes on the shared goal of preserving and growing the game, they stand a chance of writing a new chapter in baseball's storied history, one defined not by conflict, but by cooperation and mutual gain. The tug-of-war over player pay in baseball centers on two simple, yet opposing ideas: a limit on total payrolls and a guarantee that teams will spend at least a minimum. The league's boss has argued that a hard ceiling, tied to a share of league revenues, would bring predictability. He points to other sports where teams cap spending at roughly half of what they make, suggesting that such discipline would attract investors and keep costs from spiraling higher. From his view, locking payrolls to revenue would let both players and owners plan for the future, knowing exactly how much money is available for salaries each year. On the flip side, the players' union fears that a cap could choke off career-making contracts. In their eyes, free competition among teams drives up salaries, especially when rising stars hit free agency. They worry that if revenues dip, say, because of a downturn in TV rights or attendance, the cap would automatically shrink, leaving them stuck with underpaying deals. Their leaders remind players that in the last bargaining vote, the council actually rejected a deal that the rank and file approved. That historic split taught both sides that the players themselves hold the real power. If they unite, no arrangement can stick without their say-so. As formal talks near, both camps have sharpened their messages. The commissioner has taken to investor conferences to lay out detailed financial models, showing how a cap-and-floor system could stabilize club finances without stifling growth. He argues that when teams know their spending boundaries, they will invest more confidently in scouting, player development, and stadium upgrades. Behind the scenes, he recalibrates those models with real-time revenue figures, prepared to show owners exactly how different cap levels would play out under best and worst-case scenarios. Meanwhile, union emissaries have chosen union-friendly media outlets to speak directly to players. On a popular podcast funded by the union, a top representative avoided sticky questions and instead recounted how the last CBA secured record-high salaries for many players. He painted a picture of teamwork between players and their elected leaders and cautioned that capping payrolls now would risk the gains they've fought for over decades. His goal was to rally votes before the first official negotiating session, showing that unity among the players could foil any divide-and-conquer tactics. Central to the dispute is how to define revenue. Should national TV deals count? What about local broadcast contracts in stadium sales, digital media rights, and even international exhibition games? The owners want a broad definition, ensuring that every dollar the sport brings in contributes to the cap. The union insists on carving out certain categories, like minor league ticket sales and merchandise for retired player events, arguing that those funds should stay outside the cap. They fear that including every revenue stream, regardless of its variability or connection to the major leagues, could produce artificial cuts to player pay in tight financial years. Arbitration rules add another layer. Currently, players become arbitration eligible after accruing a specified number of service years, and an independent panel then sets their salary if a deal isn't reached. Owners propose raising that threshold, reasoning that it rewards teams for investing time and money in developing talent. The union counters that delaying arbitration eligibility reduces players' lifetime earnings, penalizing those who contribute early in their careers. They have floated a compromise where top performers, measured by clear statistical thresholds, keep their current eligibility timeline, while only lower-tier players face a one-year delay. This merit-based adjustment, they say, balances club incentives with fair pay. Minor league pay has become a rallying cry for the union. Prospects grind through long bus rides, cold stadiums, and modest wages while their future big league teammates rake in millions. The union has pressed for a minimum wage floor at each minor league level, funded by a small surcharge on high-end major league contracts and a slice of luxury tax revenue. Owners acknowledge the inequity, but worry about the cost of boosting pay across 15 affiliate teams per club. They suggest tying minor league raises to revenue performance under the new cap, so that small market teams aren't forced into cutbacks elsewhere. Luxury taxes and revenue sharing remain a flashpoint. Under the current model, teams exceeding a payroll threshold pay a tax that goes into a pot for lower revenue clubs. Big market owners argue this punishes success, while small market owners view it as essential for survival. The union proposes refining the luxury tax into a true cap, automatic penalties once spending hits the ceiling with no ability to opt out. In exchange, they ask for a higher salary floor and improved revenue distributions. This cap-and-tax hybrid aims to stop runaway spending while ensuring every team meets a minimum investment in player salaries. The concept of a joint ownership player stabilization fund has also surfaced. Under this idea, a fixed percentage of league revenues would flow into a shared pool. That money could cover salary floor shortfalls for small market teams, fund minor league pay raises, and even finance advanced health and wellness programs. Both sides see merit in centralizing certain expenditures, though they disagree on how large the pool should be and what uses should be mandatory versus optional. Owners know that enforcing a cap without a floor, or vice versa, could prompt a work stoppage if negotiations break down. Players remember the lost games and fan frustration of past disputes. Each side wants to avoid a protracted deadlock, but also fears appearing weak. As a result, both are laying groundwork now, speaking publicly and privately to harden their bargaining positions while leaving a sliver of flexibility for a last-minute compromise. In this high-stakes environment, every speech, every interview, every financial chart can shift the balance. The league's chief and the union's frontline spokespeople have begun the public leg of a strategic marathon that only ends when both sides sign on the dotted line, or when one side refuses and the season grinds to a halt. Through it all, the core question remains simple: how to reward players fairly without risking the economic health of the game itself. The answer will shape not only contracts in the next CBA, but the very fabric of baseball's future.